So I got a question the other day about my irritation with Gary Brecka. And this isn't necessarily with Gary. This is with the line that he supports. What is it? Pure protein or pure amino. So the argument is that you should use pure amino and not whey protein. And the argument they make is that protein turns to sugar, sugar makes you fat. And the implication is that whey protein would make you fat. That's not how it works. And the irritation I have is that Gary knows this, or he should at least. So I know I decided I wasn't going to be really deep in the chemistry, but I got to get deep in the chemistry for this one. What happens in the body so like a high protein diet is still a sugar-based diet. We've talked about this before about the difference between keto and a high protein diet, even if you have zero carbs. Like a lot of the diets that I write, a lot of people do zero carbs, and high protein and moderate fat. And that's still a sugar-based diet. And the reason I say that is because your body will take those proteins in, go through gluconeogenesis, create sugar, and your whole body runs on the sugar your body makes. Your brain, your muscles, all of it. So the idea that your body's going to take protein and break it down to sugar and create so much sugar that your body then gets fat off of it is stupid. So let me walk you through what would have to happen. So, and let's just assume that the majority, 70% or more of these people who are taking whey protein are working out, because let's face it, the target market for pure amino and for whey protein are people who are working out. So we're taking that as a standard. So let's say you work out and then you go and you take your whey protein. What's going to happen is your body is depleted in sugar. And so you've used all the glycogen in your muscles, or you've used a lot of the glycogen in your muscles. Your blood is starting to become deficient in glucose itself. And your body goes, we need to refill the stores. We need to create some more sugar for the muscles, make more glycogen, bring this in, get the blood going again. So your body looks for protein to tear apart and make sugar out of if you're not going to eat any carbohydrates. And so your body will take this sugar and take these proteins, break it apart, and it will make sugar. Now, here's the thing. As it drops it into the blood, it will then be sucked up by the musculature and by the liver. So what ends up happening is that the body is tearing down protein, making sugar. The sugar goes in the blood, and it's getting sucked into the muscles. It's getting sucked into the liver, and it's turning back into glycogen, restoring all those stores we have. Now, as the sugar in the blood starts to rise, it creates what we call glycolytic ATP, or ATP that is created from the breakdown and utilization of glucose. So as your glycolytic ATP starts to rise, what ends up happening is that the receptors that are in your body recognize that the glucose or the sugar substrate function is starting to come up. What happens then is your body starts to produce more insulin. As the insulin comes up, it shuts off gluconeogenesis. So because you're in the pancreas, it's either going to produce insulin or it's going to produce glucagon. And so what ends up happening is that as it starts to produce more insulin, it stops producing glucagon. And now we have insulin over glucagon, and that will shut off gluconeogenesis. So the idea that your body is going to take protein, turn it into sugar, to the point where it not only fills the muscles with glycogen, it fills the liver with glycogen, puts the blood back where it's supposed to be, but then continues to convert protein to sugar to the point where your body goes, we have nothing else to do with this sugar. We now have to convert it into fat, would mean that your body was producing so much sugar that the insulin then had to react in a manner that would push it into the fat storage. So that would be a massive pathological problem, because what would end up happening is that your body would just eat all the muscle tissue and turn it all into fat. And that's not how the body works. Even diabetics have enough regulation of that function so that it doesn't happen. So the idea that taking protein in, and that if you eat too much protein at the wrong time, it's going to turn into fat, isn't accurate. Now, here's the thing on that. If you're eating a ton of protein and your body's like, hey, we're totally good on sugar, then you eat sugar, whatever's in your blood is then going to move into fat. So theoretically, if you're eating a giant amount of protein and you're eating some high glycemic carbohydrates, even if it's low, even if you're like 10% of your diet is high glycemic carbohydrates, say instant oatmeal, you're still going to start maintaining fat creation, fat storage. So in that frame, yes. But here's the problem on the other side of this. Let's say that you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take these super special amino acids that don't go through gluconeogenesis. They don't turn into sugar. Fantastic. Well, what's going to happen? Your body still has to have the sugar because your blood can't run on nothing but sugar. And so your body will go, all right, cool. Let's take some of the protein that we have for these muscles and tear it apart and turn it into glucose. So that's one option. Now, the really cool option, especially if you guys are on a high protein diet, where, high protein, moderate fat, not keto, but like really low carbohydrates and mild protein, and your body gets really good at creating and normalizing its own sugar, then what ends up happening is you can go through what's called the Cori cycle. The Cori cycle is really, really cool. So when you break down glucose, again, I told you I was going to get too deep in the chemistry for you guys. When you break down glucose, it breaks into two molecules of lactate. So here's the cool thing. So like when it goes in the red blood cell, that's actually because red blood cells have no mitochondria. That's why they have to have sugar. So as the glucose comes into the red blood cell, it splits into two molecules of lactate and releases an ATP, which is the chemical the body actually runs on. Again, this is why calories don't exist. That's that whole conversation. But produces an ATP, splits into lactate. The Cori cycle takes all that lactate, remember lactic acid from working out, takes all that lactate, puts it back together, and lets it run through the system. So now you can use that lactate as a substrate to create ATP as well. So now your body is, because your body is so designed so amazingly well, what ends up happening is that all that lactic acid that you made working out now goes through the Cori cycle and produces ATP on its own. So the idea that you're gonna become fat taking whey protein is absurd. Don't worry about getting fat from taking whey protein. Now, if your whey protein has sugar in it, or if you're taking whey protein and you're mixing in a bunch of fruit, the fruit juices are the worst part of this. So like I'll tell people, like I look at people's diets and I'm like, man, this is pretty good. You have this protein shake. I'm like, what's in your protein shake? And they're like, oh, pineapple, orange juice. Orange juice is one of the biggest ones I see. They're like, oh, I like the way it tastes. Like I'll put some orange juice in, I'll put some berries in because you said berries were okay, and I'll blend it up with my protein. It tastes amazing. Okay, the orange juice has you screwed the whole thing with the orange juice. The orange juice, the glycemic function, the orange juice is way too high. So that gets back into the conversation of look at your macro functional intake. So let's say that you've got eggs in your smoothie, great option. Coconut oil, fantastic, medium chain triglyceride function, phenomenal choice. A good clean whey protein, like the proteins we have here, the chocolate, fantastic, knock it out. Good amino acid structure, clean protein, fantastic. So far, you're crushing it. Then you add, even if you want to throw some berries in there, like a mixed berry, like a blackberry, blueberry, strawberry, raspberry, like stuff like that in there. All right, that's not terrible, Then you add the orange juice in and it screws the entire thing. So what ends up happening is that you're going to bring in all of this good fats and these nutrients and everything, and then you're going to throw this massive amount of sugar into it, which is going to create a massive insulin response, which is going to start storing any sugar you already have in your blood instantly. So that's where the problem comes in for most people, is they add one thing in that kind of screws the whole thing up. But at the end of the day, if you're worried about your protein turning into sugar and making you fat, that is not how the body's set up. That's not what's going to happen. And they don't explicitly say it, but putting a sentence that's true that says protein turns to sugar, and then the next one next to it says sugar makes you fat, both those statements are accurate. The problem is that putting them together like that implies that consuming protein is going to make you fat, and that is not ever going to be how it happens. Now, again, be cognizant of the idea that if you're eating a very high protein diet, even like a lot of carnivore diets, you're still running a sugar-based protocol. So, which can be amazingly beneficial, super awesome for insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. We use it to fix diabetes all the time. It's a great diet. It's probably the diet that I recommend more than any other diet, by far. It's 70-something%. Now, the keto diets are great for epilepsy. They're great for PTSD. They're great for dementia. They work great for diabetes. There's a couple different things that we use keto diets for. An actual real keto diet. I don't usually run them for a long period of time, but they do great things. So if you guys have a specific issue, like a lot of times, like people have epilepsy. This is where the keto diet's been researched heavily for over 100 years, because we found out over 100 years ago that the best way to treat neurologic issues like epilepsy is to change the fuel source over to ketones and let the brain regenerate and heal. And it will. So there's lots and lots and lots of research on people who had horrible epilepsy, put them on a real keto diet for a couple of years, and then took them off the diet and never had epilepsy again. So we've known about the diet, like I said, for over 100 years. The idea of people calling it a fad diet is hilarious to me. But again, that's part of the suppression of. You have to understand the vast majority of the powers that be in America want you sick, want you miserable, want you fat and unhealthy, because it's profitable for them. So just kind of keep that in mind, which is, literally everything the medical community has told you the past 40 years has been wrong or a lie. Cholesterol is good for you. Vaccines are horribly, horribly dangerous and deadly. Never been researched. So every medical doctor who's ever said, I've read the research, vaccines are safe, they flat lied to you. Usually they're lying to you for the giant kickbacks they get, but that's a different topic. Cholesterol is great for you. Psychedelics are fantastic for you. They're one of the best things to heal addiction, which we've known since the 60s. But opioid addiction was profitable, so we didn't tell anybody. There's all sorts of stuff. Pretty much, Fruit Loops are not healthier for you than steak, even though our medical community has pushed that one. Masks aren't going to help viruses. Pretty much everything you've been told has been a lie to keep you unhealthy and fat and going back to getting more drugs. So if you guys have any questions, drop in the comments or hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com. See you guys next week. Have a great time.